The rain began without warning, soft and steady, turning the evening streets into shining mirrors of light and memory. Daniel Harper sat by the window of his usual cafe, his hands wrapped around a warm cup of black coffee he had not yet tasted. He came here every Thursday not because he needed coffee, but because he needed the silence. At 52, Daniel had learned how to live with quiet. His days were filled with work, drawings, and meetings, but his evenings belonged to memories he never spoke about. His wife, Margaret, had been gone for 8 years. And although time had moved forward, something inside him had stayed in the same place. He had not planned to meet anyone new. He had accepted his life the way it was, calm, predictable, and safe from the risks of love. He watched the rain with calm eyes, unaware that everything was about to change in the simplest way possible. The cafe door opened, and Emily Carter stepped inside, carrying the cold air with her. She paused near the entrance, brushing a few drops of rain from her coat. She was 32, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who had already experienced disappointment. She was not loud or attention-seeking. She moved quietly, carefully, like someone who had learned not to expect too much from life. She looked around, searching for a seat, but every table was taken. Her eyes stopped when she noticed the empty chair across from Daniel. For a moment she hesitated. She did not want to disturb him. He looked peaceful, lost in his thoughts, but she had nowhere else to sit. She walked toward him slowly and asked in a soft, respectful voice, "Is this seat taken?" Daniel looked up, surprised. He noticed her calm face, her steady eyes. There was something honest about her, something that felt familiar even though they had never met. He shook his head gently and said, "No, it's free." She thanked him and sat down, placing her bag beside her feet. They did not speak after that. The rain continued outside, and the cafe filled with the quiet sound of cups and low conversations. Daniel returned to looking out the window, but he was aware of her presence. Emily opened a book but did not read it. She could feel his calm, energy, and for reasons she could not explain, it made her feel safe. She had spent years protecting herself, building walls after her engagement ended suddenly. The man she had trusted had changed without warning, and since then, she had promised herself never to depend on anyone again. But sitting across from Daniel felt something she had forgotten existed: peace. After several minutes, Emily spoke without looking at him. "Do you ever feel like life turned out differently than you expected?" Her question was simple, but her voice carried emotion. Daniel was not prepared for such honesty from a stranger. He studied her face, wondering why she would ask something so personal. He could have given a polite answer, something distant and safe. But he saw something in her eyes that made him choose truth instead. He said quietly, "Yes, every day." Emily nodded slowly. She did not need him to explain. She understood what it meant to carry unspoken stories. That moment created a quiet connection between them, something deeper than conversation. Over the next few weeks, their meetings continued without planning. Every Thursday, Emily returned. Sometimes she arrived first. Sometimes Daniel did. But they always ended up sitting together. Their conversations grew naturally. They talked about books, work, and small memories. Daniel told her about his career as an architect, how he enjoyed creating spaces where people could feel comfortable. Emily told him about her job at a publishing company, how she loved stories because they helped her understand people. She listened carefully when he spoke, and he noticed she never interrupted. He respected that. He had met many people in his life, but very few truly listened. Daniel did not try to impress her. He did not pretend to be younger or wiser. He spoke honestly, and that honesty made Emily trust him. She began to notice small things about him. The way he stayed calm even when he disagreed. The way he thought before speaking. The way he never asked questions that would make her uncomfortable. He made her feel respected, and that feeling was rare. She had known younger men who were full of energy but lacked emotional depth. Daniel was different. He carried quiet strength, the kind that came from loss and acceptance. One evening, the rain returned, just like the day they met. Emily watched the drops fall against the window, her thoughts moving faster than her heart. She had spent years avoiding emotional risk, but Daniel made her question that decision. She wondered what kind of man he truly was inside. She wondered if his heart was still open or permanently closed. She needed to know, not for curiosity, but because her feelings were beginning to grow. She was afraid of making the same mistake. Again, she needed to understand him before allowing herself to care. She turned toward him and said softly, "Can I ask you something personal?" Daniel nodded. He trusted her calm presence. He had begun to look forward to their conversations, even though he never admitted it. Emily hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Then she asked, "If someone new came into your life today, would you let them in?" Her voice was steady, but inside she felt vulnerable. She was not asking about anyone specific. She was asking about him, about his heart, about whether he believed in connection again. Daniel froze slightly. The question reached places inside him he had not visited in years. He thought about Margaret, about the life they had shared, about the pain of losing her. He had built his life around independence and emotional safety. Letting someone in meant risking loss again. It meant allowing change, and change brought uncertainty. He looked at his coffee, seeing his reflection in the dark surface. He did not want to lie. Emily deserved honesty. After a long pause, he said, "I don't know. It would depend on the person." It was not a perfect answer, but it was real. Emily studied his face carefully. She was not looking for certainty. She was looking for openness. His answer told her that his heart was not completely closed. That moment changed something between them. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. The air felt different, heavier, with unspoken emotions. Daniel did not realize why her question mattered so much. He did not know she was testing something deeper. Emily had learned through experience that older men often hid their emotions, protecting themselves from disappointment. She needed to know if Daniel was capable of emotional risk, if he still believed in connection. His answer gave her hope, but it also made her afraid. Hope meant possibility, and possibility meant vulnerability. Emily smiled gently and stood up. She said goodbye like she always did, calm and polite. But inside, her heart was moving faster than she expected. She walked out into the rain feeling both strong and uncertain. She knew she had asked the first question. She knew his answer had revealed something important. But there was another question she needed to ask, one that would reveal even more. She was not ready yet. She needed time to understand her own feelings. Daniel remained seated, watching her disappear into the rain. He felt something unfamiliar inside his chest, something he had not allowed himself to feel for years. He realized he had begun to care about their conversations. He realized her presence had become part of his routine. For the first time in 8 years, his life did not feel completely predictable. He did not know what would happen next, and that uncertainty both frightened and excited him. That night, Daniel returned to his empty home, but the silence felt different. It was no longer heavy. It carried possibility. He sat in his chair, thinking about her question again and again. He wondered why she asked it. He wondered what she truly wanted to know. He did not realize that Emily was standing at her apartment window at the same moment, thinking about him, preparing herself for the second question that could change everything between them forever. Emily Carter did not return to the cafe the next Thursday. Daniel noticed immediately. He arrived at the same time, ordered the same black coffee, and sat in the same chair by the window. His eyes moved toward the door every few seconds, even though he told himself he wasn't waiting. He watched strangers walk in and out. None of them were her. He felt foolish for expecting anything. They were not close friends. They had no promises. They were just two people who shared conversations. Still, her absence left a quiet emptiness he could not ignore. He told himself she was busy. He told himself it didn't matter. But deep down, it did. Emily stayed away on purpose. She sat in her apartment, holding a book she never read. Her thoughts were loud. Her heart was louder. She knew she was standing at a turning point. She had spent years protecting herself from emotional risk. She had built a life where she depended on no one. But Daniel had changed something inside her without trying. He never chased her. He never pressured her. He simply existed, calm and steady. That made him different from anyone she had known. She was afraid, not of him, but of what she felt when she was with him. She knew she had one more question to ask, question that would reveal his true emotional strength. She needed to know if his calm nature came from wisdom or from fear. She needed to know if he was truly open to life or just surviving it. 3 weeks passed before she returned. Daniel was sitting in his usual place when the door opened and she walked in again. His heart reacted before his mind did. He stayed calm on the outside, but inside something lifted. Emily saw him immediately. She noticed he looked the same, but there was something different in his eyes, something softer. She walked to the table. "Hi, Daniel." He nodded gently. "Hi, Emily." There was no anger, no questions, just quiet understanding. She sat down for a moment. Neither of them spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was honest. Finally, Emily said, "I'm sorry I disappeared." Daniel shook his head. "You don't owe me an explanation." She studied his face carefully when he said that. He meant it. He wasn't trying to make her feel guilty. He respected her freedom. That mattered more than he realized. A slow breath. Her hands rested calmly on the table, but inside her heart was racing. This was the moment. She looked directly into his eyes. "Daniel," she said softly, "can I ask you one more question?" He nodded. She did not look away. If you knew you could care about someone again, but you also knew there was a chance it might hurt someday, would you still allow yourself to feel it? Daniel didn't move. He didn't expect that question. It wasn't casual. It wasn't curious. It was personal. Very personal. He understood what she was really asking. She wasn't asking about pain. She was asking about courage. He leaned back slightly, thinking carefully. His first instinct was to protect himself. He had lived peacefully for years by avoiding emotional risk. He had convinced himself that peace was enough. But now he questioned that belief. He thought about the past 8 years, the quiet dinners, the empty home, the predictable days. It was safe. Oh, but it wasn't alive. Then he thought about the past few months, the conversations, the unexpected laughter, the feeling of looking forward to Thursdays again. That feeling mattered. He looked at Emily. She was watching him closely, but she wasn't demanding anything. She was simply waiting for truth. He spoke slowly. "Yes," he said, just one word, but it carried weight. Emily's heart reacted instantly. Daniel continued, his voice calm but clear. "Pain is part of caring. You can't separate them. Avoiding pain also means avoiding connection, and connection is what makes life meaningful." He paused. "I spent years protecting myself. But protection can become isolation, and isolation isn't living. It's just existing." Emily felt something shift inside her. His answer was not dramatic. It was honest. And honesty was what she needed most. That was the second question. And Daniel had passed without trying. He wasn't fearless. Kay was brave. There was a difference. Emily looked down for a moment, gathering her emotions. She had spent years believing older men carried too much emotional weight to open their hearts again. She believed they were closed, distant, unreachable. But Daniel wasn't closed. He was careful. Careful because he understood the value of emotional connection. He wasn't avoiding love. He was respecting it. She smiled softly, but her eyes held emotion. She said quietly, most people answer that question differently. Daniel tilted his head slightly. How do they answer? They know. They say peace is more important than risk. Daniel nodded slowly. Peace without connection becomes loneliness. Emily felt her fears slowly losing power. She realized something important in that moment. She hadn't been testing him to judge him. She had been testing him to protect herself. She needed to know if he had emotional strength, not physical strength, not confidence. Emotional strength, and he did. They sat together quietly after that. Nothing needed to be forced, nothing needed to be explained. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to relax fully in his presence. For the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to feel possibility. The rain began again outside, just like the day they met. But everything felt different now. Emily spoke again, her voice gentle. I was afraid to come back. Daniel didn't interrupt. I wasn't afraid of you, she continued. I was afraid of what I felt when I was around you. Daniel listened carefully. And what do you feel? He asked softly. Emily met his eyes. Calm, she said. That word stayed in the air between them. Calm, not excitement, not chaos. Daniel smiled slightly. Because calm was what he had always hoped to offer someone again. Not intensity, not pressure, just presence. They didn't define anything that day. They didn't label their connection. They didn't rush. They simply sat together, two people who had lived enough life to understand the value of emotional honesty. As the evening ended, Emily stood to leave. But this time, something was different. She didn't walk away with fear. She walked away with trust. Daniel watched her leave, but he didn't feel uncertainty anymore. He felt peace. Not the empty peace he had known before. A living peace. A hopeful peace. He understood something now. Love didn't return loudly. It returned quietly, through simple conversations, through honest answers, through emotional courage, and sometimes it returned through to simple questions. Questions that revealed not who someone was on the surface, but who they were in their heart. And for the first time in many years, Daniel Harper knew something with certainty. His life was no longer standing still. It was beginning again,